Thank you very much, Ms. Tanya. I have picked two questions. The first one is coming from Truman. He is saying, one of the major challenges that entrepreneurs face is actually knowing how big of a market they have, mainly because of lack of relevant statistics. For example, in Zimbabwe, when I was trying to figure out how many people use WhatsApp, the only information I could get was from 2017, and that was published by Texas. And this was in 2020. Bearing this challenge in mind, how else can an entrepreneur figure out how big of a market they actually have?
Okay, so Truman, you don't have to start with the whole total available market. You can choose a segment to start off your product with, and then it builds from there. So I think last week I mentioned this. For example, when Facebook started, they started for college students. They literally went from campus. Okay, I think I'm confusing it with Bumble. You guys all saw the Bumble IPO, the youngest billionaire in American history ever. She started Bumble. When they started Bumble, which is a dating app, they started it on campuses. Facebook also did the same thing, started on campuses, was literally for the 10,000 students who were at that one university. And then you would call in and say, please come to my university. Facebook would move to the next one and then connect that university. Now, X number of years later, people in different countries, villages around the world are on Facebook. When Facebook started, they didn't have Zimbabwe in mind. They didn't even have UZ in mind. They literally had Harvard in mind. So there aren't any reliable statistics. Collecting statistics costs money. Developing countries, we don't invest in collecting enough data, unfortunately. So yeah, sometimes the data is not there. So the best way to do that is start with the market you know. As you expand on the market you know, there's a different, I can see someone saying niche market. It's not niche market. In the back of your head, you know how far this product can go, but you have to start expanding your product with the market you know. And as you dominate that particular market, it will begin to open up other markets. One thing you might even find is you might identify even byproducts for your particular product. So for example, I think YouTube was supposed to be a dating video thing where you introduce yourself. Hi, my name is Tanya. Now we use YouTube even to learn. So just think about it that way. But those are just some of the challenges that are going to come with doing business in Africa. My father always says, doing business in Africa is high maintenance. So that's what you're signing up for.
Amazing. That was clear. Thank you very much, Miss Tanya. The next question is coming from Victor. Victor is saying, I've written a book about Gambia. How can I best market it? So I think the background to that is Nambia is a culture, is a very small tribe in Zimbabwe, which is situated in the southern west. There are very few people there, right? So he has written a book about this culture and their language. How can this be marketed?
So Victor, you have a product, right? So that's what you have. So you need to make a decision as to how your product is going to get to the end user. First, what you need to do is you need to go through an empathizing stage where you think to yourself, who are the people who would like to or need to read this particular text? From there, you need to go to a point where you define who your market is. I'm in the same boat as you in terms of having content and knowing that people need it, but having to decide how that content is going to get to somebody. Okay. So one thing you can do is there are businesses that specialize in just pushing a product like yours. So if you don't have the gravitas to push it, find a company that specializes in getting books to end users. If the company isn't there and you want to now build a business around this one product that you have, which is also an idea, you now need to think, who is my market? Your market could even be schools. Schools, your Nambian history is African history. There isn't enough text on African history. You can approach schools, say, can you make this part of the curriculum? I'll give you a discount. They can cover the printing cost. then you add a little bit of a percentage to cover your admin, a little bit of a percentage to cover profit, and you push the book through schools. If not enough schools want to buy it, you can go to universities. If universities don't want to buy it, you can actually publish it on Amazon, by the way. Amazon now has a feature where anyone who's written a book can put it on Amazon. So you could do that and then start marketing it on Facebook so that all of us download your book. There's many different avenues, but what you have to recognize is you have a product and either you sell it or you get someone else to sell it and you get a royalty from it. But not everyone who writes a book pushes their own book.
Absolutely, that was comprehensive. I have two more questions. One is from Jeffrey. I call him Chief. So Chief is saying, Miss Tanya, how do you go through the design thinking process for a group of people who no longer see the need for the problem to be addressed? They would now be used to the problem to the extent of now recognizing it as normal, but outsiders like me actually see the problem.
Jeffrey, last week at Simba Education, we launched the most incredible thing I thought, of our lockdown time. We launched a virtual preschool. We had homes were amazing. Some of the homes are here. They've been learning, sending us videos. They were knocking on our door like, when is our book arriving? When is our book arriving? And my own parents at the Simba preschool actually told us that there is no need for their children to keep going to school and that they didn't need to do anything. And these are people where the book was compulsory, okay? And I had to, as a leader, make a decision. Do I leave them like that or do I appeal to them? Sometimes what you find is that you may have to partner with an NGO that does advocacy work to advocate for people to want change. What I did with the small, simple example is Tinashe is on my team. He's on the call right now. Tinashe Msharu had conversations with the parents. The pass rate was 37.11% for ZIMSEC. Where do you think your child is going to be? In the 37% or in the 80 or in the 63% of kids that didn't pass? Get the book and they're in the 37. Don't get the book and they're in the 60 something. You have to sometimes advocacy and pushing for research awakens people to solving a problem. But when you've got limited resources, you don't really want to go there because you might invest in something. And as long as the customer doesn't pay for it, there's nothing you can do.
Amazing. Geoffrey, have you been answered? Because I have received more than what I asked for in that question, more than what I was expecting. That is quite informative, Ms. Tanya. Thank you for that. Billy, I'll ask you to rephrase your question so that Ms. Tanya will be able to give you an appropriate response to your question. I feel like your question is not focused. It's all over the place. Can you please just rephrase? He's my young brother. I know him. So I'll ask you to just rephrase that question, Billy, and send it once again in the chat box. Great. I'll just go through some of the questions, some of the comments that we've heard. Prince is saying, power-packed session. Terry is saying, thank you, Miss Tanya. There's some questions, some contributions I saw earlier on that were so powerful. It's really a privilege to listen to this wonderful session. I'm gaining a lot. That is from Paul. And then Rejoice is saying, thank you for a life-changing session. This is amazing. Tell others, Rejoice, what you have just experienced here. Oh, Victoria, sorry for calling you Victor. So she's correcting me in the chat box. But no, it's not Victor, it's Victoria. So someone here is asking, can I replace empathizing with problem identification, or else I'm confusing myself? That's a question in the chat box from Edson Bope.
Okay, so remember, you've already identified a wider problem. So the problem we started with was just water. That was it. All she said was water. There's no water, right? The difference, I'll give you an example of problem identification and identifying the problem. We settled on the long lines. We could have settled on the idea that could have come out if Shingai had just, in the spur of the moment, said, let's do unserviced pipes. The idea that came out could have been, we're going to build underground pipes and sell them back to the government, and then they can have stable water. Okay. The other thing that was brought about was cost. We could have targeted a different segment and said, we want to bring down the cost of water. We could have targeted water sanitation. We could have said, let people use the piped water. Then when it arrives dirty, we give them a tablet to drop in there, and then it becomes clean. So we identified the wider problem, but you have to narrow it down. A lot of people fail because they think the wider problem is the definition of the problem they're solving. When we look at the education sector, the problems are massive. There's problems everywhere, but you can't build a company if you're there to solve every single problem. There's a reason why Twitter is 140 characters. Instagram is one picture or now multiple pictures. There's a reason why TikTok is just a video. Imagine if there's room for all of those different companies where it's all social media. There's room for so many players in solving one problem. So unless you have your problem defined, you are going to sink your money and come back crying. I think that was the last question. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes, that was the last question. I was waiting for Billy to rephrase his question and send it through, but I will keep that for next week. I'll just reach out to him over WhatsApp, and then we can then ask you just before the question comes. There is an interesting comment here that is coming from the chat box. This person is saying, "You are smart, Miss Tanya. Thank you so much for these questions you're answering. You are helping us. If I can put it that way. Thank you very much." So this is the impact that this session has made, Ms. Tanya, and I can see a lot of questions coming through. And if you have been imported this way, you also need to have your friends come through to just come and participate in this session. We have more sessions that are coming that are like this, and you need to invite your friends, your brothers to come through to this session. Ms. Tanya, before we go, or before I let you go, do you have last words that you want to share with us concerning the session that we have heard today?
No, just keep learning. Invite your friends to come and listen with you. Remember last week we spoke about how the only way we're going to be able to get our country out of poverty is if we build strong, small businesses. If I start a business if everyone on this platform, there's 445 of you right now. Okay, let's assume we were all entrepreneurs. If all of us just employed 2 people, that would be 800 times 2, 1,600 people who have a job today who didn't have a job yesterday. So remember that creating a business or being an entrepreneur is about creating value. So let's keep learning. Let's invite people, because the more of us who have the skills, the knowledge, the information, the more of us who can collaborate together, the greater we're going to get as a nation. So make sure you invite your friend next week. But thank you so much. What a privilege to speak to you guys again. Thank you again to those of you who helped me out earlier. You guys are just absolutely incredible and amazing. And thank you, Pastor Munashe, and to the YND team for putting together such a great session. I will see you all next week.